Okay, so here's the next part of the activity. Now that we have our keyboard laid out, what I want to get into is immediately learning all 12 major scales. And some people don't teach this way because they think it's more confusing. I've found more success with my percussion students going ahead and teaching you all 12 scales right at the get-go, because what I'm really trying to get across to you is understanding the scale degrees and the major scale formula, which is what we're going to talk about right now. When you understand the major scale formula, then learning the scales becomes really easy and it doesn't seem arbitrary or random. When I was in school learning how to play my scales, they'd say, okay, here's the C scale, and you'd learn the C scale. Then they would say, okay, here's the B flat scale, learn the B flat scale. I don't think I really put it all together until I was in high school, that they're actually all the same. All the scales are exactly the same. The only thing that's different is what pitch we're starting on. So the degrees, if this is the first scale degree and this is the second degree, the degree from one note to the next note is always going to be the same for every scale. And if I had known that when I was in middle school, I probably would have memorized my scales when I was really young, and it would have helped me out later in life. So I'm doing that with you guys. And I'm taking my time in this lesson right now just so to make sure I'm not confusing, but usually I go a little faster than this. All right, so now that we have our keyboard, what we're going to do is take our lined piece of paper just to help us stay organized, and I'm going to write out the major, I don't know why I did that, the major scale formula. Now, a formula is kind of like a roadmap, or it's kind of like directions in something that you have to put together that you buy from the store. So a formula is basically like, okay, well, you're telling me that this is the C scale, but how did we decide that? Well, somebody a long time ago, and that's another history lesson I don't really want to get too much into, but he decided that these are the notes that work well with our music, and we're going to give it this name, the major scale, the major key, and this is how we come up with those notes. Okay? So there's a little bit of science, a little bit of math involved in this art that we know as music. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down our scale degrees. We know that there's 8 notes on our scale. I told you that earlier. So I'm going to write that in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What I'm doing is I'm making sure it's approximately evenly spaced. There's a good reason for this. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is write a W or 1/2 to give you the formula, and I'll explain this in a second. Okay, W means whole step. Half means half step. So what is a step? This is really, really easy, okay? One note to another note is one step. Sorta. We actually will call it a half step. One pitch to another pitch is actually a whole step. So that's what I mean by one note to another note. So if we're going from C to D, that is actually a whole step, but I know it's a whole step because there's a note in the middle. What we're trying to do is with a whole step, we're trying to achieve going from one letter name to another letter name based on this, what we call interval. An interval is the space between one thing and another. So the space from me to you is maybe 4 feet. That is an interval. Space from me to you is maybe half that, 2 feet. Well, in music, the space from one note to another note has space. There's space in there. So we have to define that space to help us with this formula. So if we're going from a C to a D, we're going to call that a whole step because we have a note in between. So from C to C sharp, or if we want to call it C to D flat, it's a half step because it's the very next note. So a whole step always skips a note. Or another way to look at it is a whole step always has a note in between. You with me there? A half step is always the next note. So from C to C sharp, that's a half step. From E to F, that's a half step. From B to B flat is a half step. These are all notes that are right next to each other. But from E to D, that's a whole step because you have a note in between. From E to F, that is not a whole step even though it looks like it is, because they are two white keys next to each other, or yellow keys on this yellow piece of paper, there's no note in between, so it's a half step. So you need to understand that half steps are always the next note. Whole steps always have a note in between, just one note in between. Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This is one formula that we have in music, and it's specific for the major scale. It's just for this type of scale. There are other types of scales, but you guys don't need to worry about that right now. So when I said this is kind of like a map, you always have a starting point. Your starting point is going to be on your first note, whatever that first note is. And then you have to get to the second note, but somehow you have to get to the second note. So we're going to use the C scale since we've already talked about it a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write C right there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and write in all the letter names because I have to use all of the letters. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So what I want you to notice is I wrote the letter names under the numbers. That's to help me stay organized so I don't get confused with where I'm at. Okay? So I have to go from C to D, and I have to make sure it's a whole step. So let's check that out. If I'm on C and the direction says to go up a whole step, that means I'm going 1, 2. That's a whole step. All right, great. Now we're on the second pitch, which is a D. If I have to go up another whole step, 1, 2, it's a regular E. There we go. So I want you to notice that I'm putting my finger where I'm at so I don't get lost. It's really easy to get lost when you're figuring out these scales on paper. But we're doing it on paper first because it'll make it easier when you start playing them. Okay, so now we're on E, and I'm putting my finger on E. I have to go up a half step. So, boop, next note. All right, so I'm on F. So now I need to go up another half step, or sorry, a whole step. 1, 2. 1, 2. Now I need to go up another whole step. 1, 2. Now I need to go up another whole step. 1, 2. And now I need to go up a half step because it says so, and a half step would be just a regular C. So this scale is good to go. It checks out. I've done everything it says there. I've checked my math. You guys have to write down how you get to your end result in math a lot, right? So this is kind of the same thing, is as you write it out, you just need to make sure you're right. Don't skip steps. If you skip steps, you might make a mistake. This is all about getting it right. And I want you to get right by doing it the right way. Okay, so we could go and do these scales in any order. Let's just pick a random scale. Let's just pick A, okay? So if I'm going to do the A scale next, first thing I need to do is I need to write in all the letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That's the first thing you need to do because you know you need to use every letter name. You cannot skip one. Something else you need to know is the first letter and the last letter is always going to be the same. If you're doing this, always an octave, always going to be the same. So it's not the same pitch, but it's the same pitch name, 1 octave higher or 2 octave higher, however far you're going with these scales. So if we're going to use our formula, I got to start on A. So A is right there. It says to go up a whole step. So let's go up a whole step. Now you're looking at this hand. 1, 2. Okay, so we're using B. So that's good. B is great. Now it says we need to go up a whole step. 1, 2. Oh my gosh. It's not a regular C. It's going to be a C sharp. So this is why we're using C sharp instead of D flat, is because we're not even at D yet. We're on C. So we have to call it some sort of other note. And so since it's C that we're changing, we're raising it up, we're going to call it C sharp. So now we're on C sharp. I have my pen on, or marker on the C sharp. So now we have to go up a half step. So half step is just the next note up, so that's going to be there. It's going to be a D. So now we have the D figured out. So now we're on D. It says we have to go up a whole step, so we're going to go 1, 2, so it's an E. From the E, it says we have to go up a whole step. 1, 2. Oh.
F.
Now I'm on an F, but it's not just any regular F, it's an F sharp. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
All right, so now we're on F sharp. We have to go up a whole step. 1, 2. Oh, so now we're on G sharp. And then from G sharp, it says we have to go up a half step. So, boop, right there. Now we're on the A. Now, I did this very slow and very methodically in a way that was really clear for me. Where I'm at here, I always put my finger on it until I'm on the next note. When I'm here, I always put my pen on where I'm at, or my finger on where I'm at until I get to the next note. That way, I'm keeping it all together. All right, let's do one more together, and then I'll try letting you guys do this on your own. So that checks out. That's good to go. Let's do another random one. Let's start with a flat and see what happens. So we're going to start with A flat since we did the regular A. So A flat. If you're starting with A flat, you got to start with A flat, okay? Now, here's a little shortcut. We know that the last note's the same as the first note, right? So the last note's going to be what? A flat. But we know in the middle, we have to have every other letter represented. B, C, D, E, F, G. So now we're on A flat. Here's A flat. We have to go up a whole step. 1, 2. Oh, look, we're on B flat. Great. Terrible looking B, but that's what it is. B flat. So now we have to go up another whole step. 1, 2. Oh, it's a regular C. Great. I don't have to change anything. Now we have to go up a half step. 1. So this half step is going to be affecting this note. So we don't call it a C sharp. We call it a D flat. So now we're on D flat. We have to go up a whole step. 1, 2. So that is going to be this E becomes E flat. So now we're on E flat. I have to go up a whole step. 1, 2. Oh, it's a regular F. That's perfect. I don't have to change anything. Now we have to go up another whole step. 1, 2. Oh, it's a regular G. And now from G, we have to go up a half step to there to A flat. So we're good. And reminder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're still dealing with just 8 notes. So it doesn't matter what scale we do, but here are all the scales that we do have to do at some point. We have to do a regular B. We have to do a B flat. We have to do a regular D. We have to do a regular D flat. We have to do a regular E. We have to do a regular E flat. We do have to do an F at some point. We got to do a regular G flat. And I think that covers all 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, it does. All right, great. So here's what I recommend that you do when you start doing these on your own. Of course, you're going to write this keyboard down. You're also going to write down this formula on another piece of paper. You're going to do the C scale first, just like I did it, and make sure everything looks nice and neat and orderly like I did. And then what I would do next is your A scale, and try to do it on your own, and then check it with mine and see if you did it right. First thing you have to do is, after you have your formula and degrees written down, is you write in all the letter names. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Write all those in. Then you start going one step at a time and making sure that you're correct along the way. And guess what? Once you do this once, if it's right once, I will never ask you to do it again. You keep it with you always. It'll help you learn the scales. You can stop it.